Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Playmobil The Movie. Before I made my worst of the year video, I was like, I better watch Playmobil The Movie. It's real bad. It is animated, bombed, and I guess in that respect, this should be sort of notable. And it is just not. Is it as bad as they say? No. Is it good? Not at all. But it is a movie, I guess, and thus we are here, so yeah. I think Playmobil wants to be, obviously, the Lego Movie. It was put in development as soon as the Lego Movie was a hit, a big hit, and they were like, oh man, Lego Movie's good, so clearly a studio will greenlight a Playmobil movie. And in a certain respect, I get it, because, hey, you know, that's how Hollywood is about movies. In other respect, I don't get it. Because as much as projects like STX behind this and Ugly Dolls, the problem with that is Lego, before there was a Lego movie, there were whole Lego film festivals. People made films with Legos, did stop motion animation with Legos. There is a whole kind of sub-genre of film and home filmmaking with Legos. Yeah, I don't see that from Playmobil or Ugly Dolls. So that whole subsection isn't really there. As well as, like, I don't know, like, what brand-wise makes Playmobil different. Like, I would say, like, I don't know if this is that much better than Ugly Dolls. Like something like Angry Birds or something, like, at least gets, like, kind of really pushes, like, how it doesn't feel exactly like the Lego Movie. This is like a direct copy, but it's not actually saying anything with it. It's not like going like, oh hey, we're that different. There are certain differences, but there's only one that's really interesting, and the rest you're sort of like going through this thing. And while I was watching, I was like, the only time I got sort of a sense of nostalgia was the little robot R2-D2 type character. I went, oh, I sort of remember kids having that. And I don't think I ever had Playmobil. Maybe I did. It's not like a real nostalgic thing. And that part, I was like, oh, I remember the robot, but the rest just look like Playmobil people. Everyone says they were the generic knockoffs. And I always remember, like, kind of clueless rich kids who would have them, where you'd be like, why don't you play with Legos? And like, no, but Playmobil is better. And you're like, yeah, your Dogtooth house is weird that you think that this is a thing. Because, like, poor kids watch a lot of TV, so they would know what Legos are, and rich kids wouldn't, and you could fool them easier. That was at least my experience. Also, they're Dogtooth kids. I'm going to keep saying the movie Dogtooth. That's a good reference. This is the reference you're expecting in this review for Playmobil. But it's just kind of remarkable how unbad it is. I mean, I think this would be one of the worst movies of the year if we didn't get two Norm of the North films, Arctic Dogs, and a Lion King remake. It's like a triple shot of shit right to your heart. So this is like standard, no chance of making a dent. Also, Cats came out. I mean, this is like not even a good bad movie. I kind of was like, I better see this before the year's out. Or I mean, before I stop talking about the year. And then you get there and you're like, oh, yeah, that's it. Cool. So this basically is about two kids, a brother and a sister, who are transported to the land of Playmobil. That part is sort of like, yeah, you know, that's cool, whatever. And then before that, though, it's like a musical, and her, who's played by Anna Taylor-Joy, who's like not someone you expect in a movie like this, and that's weird. And she almost like I don't know, she has a weird, interesting look to her, and I felt like for some reason this movie like took that out of her when she's live action, because the beginning's live action, she's singing about the possibilities of life, and then, you know, oh, I can't wait to tell mom and dad I'm not gonna go to school, I'm gonna take a year off. By the way, I should point out, these people are rich, which explains my weird Dogtooth theory about Playmobil, which this all makes sense now. This is all just like crazy rich people think anyone wants Playmobil. And poor people are smart enough to go, I don't see any ads for Playmobil when I'm watching Ninja Turtles or whatever. I don't know. So, point being, they're rich. And she's like, I'm going to take a year off and experience the world. Because, again, don't need a job because I'm rich. So, and they live in a nice house in Manhattan. Again, rich. So, she's like, I have a passport, which is like, you're pretty wealthy. I'm fairly certain you had a passport before, but again, Dogtooth. So they go to, she's singing this song. It's like I've heard like a couple of people in Pan said it's like a Disney Channel movie. I didn't watch those ever, so sure. And then so she is like, I'm going to do this. And then like the world is like, psych, your parents are dead. Have fun not traveling, sucka. Turns out her dyed hair and crazy clothes, that's all changed. because now she's like basically has to take care of her brother because she has no relatives, I guess. And then he basically stays the same age, even though it says 4 years later. And then he like goes off and is at a toy fair, which I thought was the Javits Center, but then it's like one of those other places that isn't the Javits Center. And then people are like, you never went there? And I go, no. And you're like, yeah, nobody goes there. They go to this toy fair and there's like a lighthouse going around zapping people. That makes no sense. Does this movie cannot like make sense with the lighthouse? Because the lighthouse, the movie The Lighthouse, about a lighthouse and a lot of in black and white, has a crazy light in it that does magical things. Is that connected? Or, well, maybe not in real life, but whatever. Is that connected to this? Let's say it is. Who cares? So they are transformed into Playmobil people, and then it's not like Lego where there's different worlds. It's just like Playmobil in this Playmobil world, which is not explained, and then they just have an adventure, whatever, they learn to grow up on it. It doesn't matter. And then, like, at the end of it, not to spoil this really original movie, she's like, now I'm going to experience life. And this kid's like, yeah, I think he says, like, you died with mom and dad. Like, you're not dead like them. You're going to go off into the world. And she's like, yeah. And then they woke up the next day after this whole Playmobil freak out they had where they're Playmobil characters. And they woke up and she was like, wait, he's clearly like at most in 5th grade, maybe 6th grade. There's like 7 more years he has growing up. I guess we'll go to like a 2-week vacation to a place once. Like maybe I drop him off with a relative, which will severely change his life and all his friends. If I do that, so that's pretty cruel. So maybe I'll just like, we'll just do like, you know, we'll go to like Iceland for a week or something. I don't know. You know, we'll have some fun. It'll be sick. And that's kind of like as most is really what's going to happen with this. I mean, that's the depressing part of this film is they're like, yeah, and you're going to go off. And I'm like, you have not expressed that there are any relatives this kid has to stay with. And I'm pretty sure if they did, his quality of life would go down pretty tremendously. So the real kicker to the Playmobil movie of this whole thing is that she would not be able to do that. There is no way, if you're responsible for a child, that you can do that at all. And if you did, you'd be a piece of shit because you're going to ruin that kid's life so you can go off by yourself. I understand she's young. I understand she's been dealt a cruel bunch of cards, but realistically, it's not like aunt and uncle are going to live in their Manhattan penthouse. Oh, wait, maybe actually. Regardless, they do not establish what is going to happen to this kid. And she clearly does not have a backup plan. She's like, I'm going to go off. I'm going to experience the world. Or maybe I have experience because the Playmobil fraudulently fucked up my passport, which is a whole other thing. She's got to get that replaced. They have this thing, this spy parody, which I love when people do James Bond parodies. They do nothing, no statement on James Bond. It's just like, what if he's James Bond, but he's funny? And I'm like, so you mean Austin Powers, but without saying anything about James Bond. So you're worse than Austin Powers. That's where we're at, I guess. And that character's played by Daniel Radcliffe. Again, doesn't make any sense. Why didn't you get Pierce Brosnan? Or Timothy Dalton? Or George Lazenby? What's he doing? Doesn't matter. Don't get any of those. We have Daniel Radcliffe. Famous actor who played a spy. He was in The Tailor of Panama, actually, which is really good, which Pierce Brosnan was in. Maybe they were saying something about that. I probably should have just rewatched The Tailor of Panama. I remember that was a pretty good movie. Man, it's hard to talk about this movie. I'm kind of just like making up a bunch of bullshit because it's like, this is like such an unremarkable film. It's like almost like maybe the worst in terms of like there is nothing to say about it other than, yeah, ripped off Lego Movie pretty bad and it had nothing to show for it. The music's fine. Adam Lambert sorta does an okay job. I think people give him a little too much credit. Feels like he's trying to milking it a little bit. Then it's like, why are the Roman people stealing stuff and doing this Colosseum thing? Like, what's the point? Does this play into Playmobil lore? Do I give a shit? No. It just kind of like just happens and is gone. And it's probably the worst Lego ripoff. It's worse than even the worst Lego Movie, which is that Ninjago, I guess? Maybe, I don't know. Lego Movie 2 wasn't that great. I know some of you guys like it, but I was not so into that. I think Playmobil will just go down as being utterly unremarkable, even though it should be. It should be like, oh, this was this really bad Lego ripoff. But it's like, we know, like, come on, we got Norm of the North, we got Arctic Dogs, we got all these things. We got 2 Norm of the Norths. This can't cut it in terms of how bad. It just is just a bad Hollywood rip-off sort of movie, and it's sort of laughable that they tried it with Playmobil of all things. I have so little nostalgia for it. It was just like the weird robot who I remember when you'd like take out toys to play with someone, you'd be like, oh cool, there's this robot, beep boop boop, let's just put it back, where's your X-Men toys? And that would be the end of it. I mean, like, Playmobil is just so unremarkable. I think that's the problem with it. They're like toys you're like, oh, I guess this is a toy line people play with. And even as a kid, when you like arguably will just like grab any toy and not necessarily have taste or opinions on things, you'll sort of put up with it. But as someone who is not one of those things currently, I just don't really like this film. I know it was directed by someone who was like head of animation or director of animation, Lino Salvo, whatever, for Frozen. Clearly he wanted to get a better job somewhere or direct something. Congratulations, you made the Playmobil movie. This film, of all the bad animated movies of 2019, and I guess there were a few, I don't think it was as bad as people say in terms of animation. We got Toy Story 4, we got Klaus, we got I Lost My Body, Primal, stuff like that. So I feel pretty good about 2019 in terms of animation, but we did get a lot of stinkers that you're just like, what was that? And this is one that very much, it sort of reminds me of Secret Life of Pets too, and like, you're like, what? And then it just kind of goes, and you know, in 20 years, someone will be like, remember they made a sequel to Secret Life of Pets, or they made a Playmobil movie, and you're like, yeah, and I saw it, and you'll just like look down, and they're like, you okay? And you're like, what? What? And then they're like, Playmobil, like, right, man, the Lego movie, that was a good movie, remember that one? And then you just talk about, you know, the fourth term of Trump being president or something. Anyway, Playmobil just was not remarkable in the least. It's sort of remarkable in its unremarkableness, and then just kind of leaves you thinking like, wow, how did you make this even less imaginative? I mean, sometimes I was thinking it was throwing out so many gags trying to pretend to be imaginative, it just oversold how unimaginative it truly was, which is sort of remarkable in its uselessness. All right, so if you have seen Playmobil, the movie, and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.